Serious, Redditors who have experience in military combat, what things depicted in action movies and games are not true in real life? Nothing I've seen in movies is like the combat I experienced, except one thing. The first 20 minutes of Saving Private Ryan gets one thing right, the bullet noise, not the shot, a bullet passing close by. It has weight like a piece of incredibly long, thin rebar just appearing out of nowhere right beside you. Gets your undivided attention. Frick, the guy who got that right drove me right out of the theater. The temporary shell shock parts were good too from a sound perspective, except for the fact that in the movie they were temporary. I roll everything sounds like you have saran wrap over your ears. That is a direct order. No crap. All orders are freaking direct orders. There was never a dynamic where my leadership had to tell me they were serious. So quit playing LOL. None of Hollywood is true in real life. Military combat is boring, monotonous, mixed with seconds of adrenaline. Your weapons jam. You're hungry, tired and sleepy. The gear is heavy and burdensome. It looks cool on television, but it's fake. Source: USMC veteran. War is 99% boredom and 1% sheer terror. I used to live with an army ranger who described being in combat as absolutely terrifying, but only afterwards. In the heat of combat he would default to his training, but only realize how fricked up and scary things were after it was all over. He also said he was cold and hungry a lot, and he would have paid $1 million for a slice of cherry pie. The enemy doesn't always just die. I've seen enemy combatants take more damage than you could possibly imagine and keep going. I've seen them pass out on the field and wake back up to fight some more. Magazine changes whilst moving are freaking tricky. Well, if you wanna keep the empty one anyway, nobody in movies seems concerned with keeping them. When contact is made, combatants from both sides fire a shitload of ammunition and don't hit very much. A wounded soldier is a subjective term. I've seen a soldier with 9 gunshot wounds be fully conscious and smoking a cigarette. I've seen a soldier with a very minor shoulder wound go into shock and nearly die. Most of the soldiers who appear very tough and talk about wanting to be in combat all the time don't do very well in an actual combat situation. The clear thinkers are usually the quiet guys. Female soldiers can be a force to be reckoned with. A lot of soldiers are actually hesitant to engage the enemy. When it actually comes time to fire on enemy combatants, there's still something there inside of us that has to be overridden in spite of the training and the situation. One of the most difficult things about being in a combat situation is that you can't hear a goddamn thing. No one is wearing hearing protection and your ears are ringing like crazy. Communication can be very difficult. Noise. Firing handguns and firearms inside is really quite distressing on the ears. The number of actions movies where it's no big deal, and they fire round after round without flinching in a confined space is pretty unrealistic. As an R-64D Apache helicopter crew chief, the entirety of the Nicolas Cage movie Firebirds, I feel like Neil deGrasse Tyson watching Gravity when I see that flick. I don't think anyone can point out anything accurate about Firebirds, other than those are indeed helicopters. In the most intense battle it can be total chaos. The only thing that gives an edge is the constant practice of contact drills etc in your initial training and general day-to-day squad, section, platoon and company training. Communication is one of the most effective winners of a battle, whether it's sign, radio or sheer brute voice, though often the latter doesn't work except to get some attention from an enemy rifleman. Gunshots aren't constant, they are intermittent, and the most random peaceful things will occur smack bang in the middle of a battle, like being offered a cup of tea. Most grenades don't go up in a fireball, you really have to tinker with cars to make them blow up. Weapons jam reasonably frequently, though if you clean to the right environmental conditions you'll usually be fine. Initiative and smallest angles of fire will often have bigger outcomes than you originally thought. Most battles occur over significant distance 300-800 meters. Urban warfare is usually incredibly slow and then amazingly fast. This is obviously subject to numerous variables. If you are shot most people don't notice in the initial milliseconds following, and most of the toughest guys are the ones who mentally process stuff well. There can be a significant amount of downtime, but that's to compensate for the full-on moments. Despite all the training, Science shows that only less than 20% of soldiers will actually fire directly into another combatant unless that combatant is directly threatening them or a friend. I've found the HBO series Generation Kill to be the most accurate portrayal of war. I did 2 tours both year-long in Iraq. Agreed. It's the perfect balance of dicking around during firefights and getting crap done, along with the platoon dynamics and individual characters. There are no back-to-back headshots and people don't die right away. During initial contact you want to gain fire superiority. You don't have to kill the guy, just get their heads down so you can move to cover or flank. Also it is very loud, i.e. we got in a firefight inside a building and I couldn't even hear the guy next to me shouting out orders. My ears rang for 2 weeks after. It can also be a lot of boredom sitting on guard for hours at a time staring at the same area for days, weeks, even months. Grenades don't cause huge balls of fire when they explode. Cause don't blow up anything like in movies or games. People don't go flying back when shot. Knife kills are not a real thing. Most of all you don't respawn or sit and magically heal. I would say that knife kills are rare, not common, not a real thing. A guy in my unit has 2 knife kills defending himself from an insurgent attack on his free on board. In no way was it planned. It just kinda happened. Parachute infantrymen Iraq 07 and 09. Cause are really resilient. We've had a 240, 249, M4W 203 rounds, and a Barrett pumping rounds into that mother and he just kept going. He died of blood loss later in the hospital, but naive 19-year-old me thought it was going to be a lot different. Maybe with fire and whatever. Nope. M203 rounds are really weak, and don't blow up with fire or anything. Just kicks up dust and makes loud noise. Nobody gets confirmed kills. It's extremely rare and almost always reserved for a good sniper section on special missions. Most people that tell you they got this or that are most likely lying. The people in Iraq frick each other up far more than we frick them up. That's not portrayed enough. Saw a family in the back of a van chunked up over religious Sunni Shia bulls. There's more, but I am on mobile. It makes you go insane. While you're there you can't wait to come home, and then once you come back you miss being deployed. Regular civilian life is actually harder to deal with. In the military everything is provided for you, even the mental support of your fellow soldier. Then once you come back it all disappears and you feel alienated from society. No one knows what you've been through. Then after a while you start to forget and carry on with life. Go to college when you're 25 with a bunch of 18-year-olds that you can't really identify with, and then you start a job and hopefully find a few friends that you can. It all gets better with time. Real PTSD is the worst, the kind where when you hear a helicopter you start to cry uncontrollably because you've seen so many mangled bodies come off them. The thing that's weird is that while you're over there nothing phases you, it's just a job, and training muscle memory kicks in. This only from personal experience. Not everyone is the same, but we are all human and real war takes a toll on everyone. I haven't played a game that has depicted war correctly. A movie though, Lone Survivor, and Das Boot is pretty accurate. Both are movies of what happens when everything goes bad. Confusion for 1. You rarely know where the guy until they expose themselves to fire shots at you. Training kicks in, meaning you work well together doing complex things without direction. Movements and other orders have been trained on, so everyone knows what their role is. There is a real phenomenon called bullet time. What seemed like 12-20 minutes of an engagement was really 5-7 minutes. Your overall mission and procedures for combat are different for each unit. Your orders could be return fire and exit the area if under attack, or engage and defeat the enemy. The randomness of it, while you extensively train for scenarios, reality is extremely random. The terrain, weather, you're in their position, size of your force, size of enemy force, capabilities of equipment, and ferocity of both your force and theirs are just some examples. The largest thing not depicted to me is the intelligence or lack thereof. That is information of the battle space, location of where you and friendlies are, overall objective, tasks, enemy intelligence, etc. You have an understanding that your unit is like one of many pins holding a gear that is a part of an engine that is a part of a bulldozer that is a machine a part of a construction site. TL. Doctor, the reason why combat is unrealistic in movies is because all the intricacies of a unit in combat. A movie is limited to a linear story and running time. 1/327 in 101st ABN. Kunar Province. I've been through the Karengal Valley, featured in Restrepo, the Shirayak Valley, featured in Lone Survivor, Watapa Valley, and many other crevices in that mountainous hexscape that is eastern Afghanistan. Beautiful countryside though. One of my favorite things to do is watch action movies and tear them to pieces. Mother suckers don't even know one battle drill. Anyways, things that annoy me. Mother suckers not seeking cover. Why the frick are you standing in a doorway while someone is firing on you? The lack of ammo supply awareness. If you run out of bullets before the bad guy, life's going to suck. And by the way, every 100 rounds of 7.62 is about 7 pounds. Crap gets heavy real fast. Gear is heavy, cumbersome, and a B to keep quiet. Velcro pockets. Are you kidding me? The sense of confusion. Oftentimes, you're fired upon first. There's usually a couple seconds of where the frick did that come from until someone eventually shouts out where it's coming from and how far. By this time you should have sought cover behind a solid object, or you're sprawled out prone and as low to ground as possible if there is none currently. Which brings me to my next point. All those sweet hiding spots and perfectly placed cover in video games and movies don't fricking exist. The smart Taliban would wait until access to cover was limited or you were awkwardly situated, then fire on you. Also, any Taliban fighter worth a W penny knew to put plenty of open space between us and them so we couldn't get close without having to bound through a field, large terraces, down a freaking mountain and up another one, etc. The ones that rarely did and suffered greatly. I mean, they all usually did. We have Apache attack helicopters for frick's sake. It's freaking loud. Gun smoke and other smoke gets in your eyes and it's all you can smell. It's an assault to the senses and you have to ignore it. I don't feel like that's ever depicted enough. Weapons jam every now and then, and it's sometimes a real B to fix a weapon malfunction. But it does happen. Firing from a fixed position isn't ideal. It gives your opponent the chance to maneuver on you. I suggest you maneuver also. There were times when firefights went on for hours, but that was rare. Air support would usually deter long firefights, but they weren't always available. So it's not anything like constant action. It was usually sparse and lasting only a few minutes when it did happen. Patience was key. If you ever think you can be a one-man army, you're an ignorant crap. The first person to win in a fight is the man whose battle buddy shows up first. 3 of my battle buddies for every one of your battle buddies is usually prime conditions. Never seen a movie show a grunt monkey stomping his rifle to fix a double feed. Kinda late to the party here, and there are a lot of great answers. Here are a couple things I'd add. From my experience in southern Afghanistan, where the OEF rules of engagement were pretty restrictive, the constant anticipation of that first shot coming in was incredibly unnerving, even though it got a little more lax toward the end, due to experience and the just another day attitude, not because it was any less dangerous. I remember how instantaneous either hitting the ground or finding cover is. Everyone freezes up given the right situation. Whether it be rounds impacting within inches of your face or hearing "I'm hit." Luckily, this usually lasts a couple seconds at most before getting back to the task at hand or taking the proper steps given the situation. The noise of it all was mentioned earlier. I'd just add that everyone is yelling as well, at least at first. In many environments, the direction of shots that are fired is hard to locate, especially when you add the panic and urge to find cover. So you have guys yelling out direction, distance, number of combatants, weapons jams, etc. It's a combination of ringing, weapons firing, people yelling, and any other noises, the dull mumble of the radio, any grenades, yada yada. Myth: you're shooting that truck while the good guy is crawling through it. He heroically makes it through the back with lots of holes above and around him. Reality: the tracers immediately catch the interior on fire and he is coughing and hacking on white phosphorus that is burning him alive. If that doesn't kill him pretty quickly, then the spall and bullet fragments impacting from the outside will. Myth: men fly up in the air when shot. Reality: dudes just fall down like they tripped. Myth: contact is always a heroic endeavor. Reality: getting shot at is surreal until it's scary as frick. Driving around is boring until you are dead from the bomb buried in the road that you'll never even see. Myth. Going to war is fun. Reality. It's boring until you're dead or you don't want to be there anymore. It's always at the inopportune moments when you are crapping or spacing out thinking about home that you get hit and have to do something about it. Source. MI Weenie attached to an MPBN with a psycho for BN commander. The thing that always gets me is the way everybody moves in movies. No one runs as sexy and gracefully. In every firefight I've ever been in, people were tripping and falling all over crap. That and ripping your pants and trying to conceal your dong for the rest of the mission. From the conventional side, the combat part of deployment is hard to distinguish from somewhat coordinated chaos. When the bullets start flying, both sides just pound away with whatever they've got until the other side stops or slows down. The goal isn't so much to kill the other guy, but to make him stop shooting, and more often than not a lot of people get killed unless you're using indirect or close air support. It might not seem like it, but modern combat is more about gaining ground strategic position than it is about putting holes in people. That being said, it's loud, fast, and when it happens, you'd better hope you've trained well because that's all you're left with. From the special operations side, pretty much the same, but with less people, more responsive available in direct and close air support and cooler looking gear. From the special operations side, in areas where you don't have a combat infrastructure, pretty much everywhere besides Iraq, Afghanistan, do everything you can to prevent the shooting from starting in the first place. It doesn't usually end well for a team of 4-6 with limited support. You don't need to raid-on your weapon after reloading a mag that isn't empty. If you do that, then you'll eject the round already loaded in the chamber. I can't believe people that solely develop FPS games can't figure out how a typical weapon system functions. Or is it just laziness? Battlefield 3 and 4 have this. There are 2 reload times, 1 partial load time and 1 full empty reload to prime the chamber. According to my ex, who spent 5 deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan as a 311, the safest place to be is in a firefight. Insurgents can't hit crap with a gun. The IEDs are another story altogether. It's not that they can't hit anything. Some are extremely good marksmen, especially considering some are using World War I era rifles. In Afghanistan at least, IEDs just suck because it's just something that happens to you. At least in a firefight it's a mutual fight. They shoot, you shoot back. A firefight is a gentleman's game. You know how in a movie when someone is running and there is a trail of bullet impacts following behind them? I can confirm that actually happens. But running? Frick that. You have 60-80 pounds of gear. You haven't exercised in months. It's hot as frick. You aren't running anywhere further than 20 meters. If anything, you shuffle along like a panicked penguin. 2-time vet. Baghdad, Sadr City in 0405 and just outside Baghdad, various locations. During the surge, been through my share of crap. You're going to get a lot of perspectives here. There are a lot of variables involved. As you're reading through these replies, please consider the following. 1. Not everyone, actually an overwhelming majority, was in the crap. There's a lot of support roles. 2. There are varying degrees of in the crap. 3. Everyone internalizes their experience differently, so you're likely to hear several different accounts of the same type of situation. On confirmed kills, there are confirmed kills. They take the form of witness statements, NCOs, OERs, basically performance reviews, or awards narratives. However, what is true is that it's often difficult to know who got what kill. Most of the time, there's several people firing in the same general direction, and of course everyone wants to be the hero, so confirmed is sometimes subjective. Sometimes though, it is obvious, and most of the time, many people in the unit will corroborate on individual credit if it is due. Also, not everyone regrets their service. I know I don't. Not everyone hated combat. After 8 years, I got to like being deployed more than I liked being in garrison. It's a sick, twisted acceptance that many of us develop, which over time causes us to take more risks. Need volunteers for some crazy small kill team insertion? I'll go. First man through the door? Frick yeah. I'll go. What's that? A trip down IED alley to escort EOD up? Frick. Well, someone's got to do it. I think many of us simply become numb to the very idea of death. Heck, There's been a few missions where I thought death was a foregone conclusion. I've been in some pretty hairy situations that I really didn't think I was going to make it out of. I can't remember how many last unsent letters I've written, placed under my pillow only to return to my rack a couple days weeks later and throw away, but there's still an addictive rush involved that's indescribable. As a father and husband, that's obviously a problem, and that's why I made the decision to get out. The truth is, I think you'll find many current soldiers that feel that way. The problem is, I think you'll find them underrepresented here on Reddit. What the movies always fail to convey is that vets are just as diverse as the rest of the population. We're not all tormented by our time in combat, and those of us that aren't psychotic. We have simply compartmentalized and appropriately contextualized our experience. Maybe you love war. Here's what a combat zone is like. Situation 1. Your prayers are answered and you're sent to a place remote enough to not have a bunch of dickhead SGMs and officers telling you to blouse your boots and wear eye protection, preening and posturing around base waiting for subordinate gestures to make up for the fact that their wife is getting deep dicked back home. Learn how to masturbate everywhere. Smart soldiers use their time outside the wire to find Cheris connects. Your day is measured in cigarettes. People snitch on each other. An abhorrent amount of sexual assault happens if you're in one of those mixed gender POG units, and awards ceremonies have more drama than all of high school combined. Situation 2. You go to BAF or some other giant base, and personally I don't know what it's like in these places because I would just be in transit. But seriously, frick JAF or BAF or any place with over 10,000 people. It's a contractor's job fair and filled with fat buttholes traipsing around with no weapons, and I wouldn't be upset if Haj had a bulldozer large enough to level the whole place. So yeah, frick that crap. Conclusion. Whatever you think war is, it probably is some bulls, and your boyfriend or whatever jabroni is spitting game at you about how he was at Karengal is probably full of crap and spent all year jerking off to your Facebook pictures. Oh, and actual combat can mean a lot of things. A lot of times it means taking fire from 500 meters, speeding away, calling in CAS and going back to base to fill out the 4187 so there can be a cab circle jerk. It's long periods of boring interrupted with moments that later make you go holy frick. Training really just does take over, and crap isn't though about till later lots of times. Actually the military in general is like this. It's mostly training and bulls, with occasional cool crap thrown into the mix. I'm an ex-weekend warrior. I haven't deployed but my so is military full time and has. I am familiar with how it works in the life. My husband is a former Spec Forces officer and veteran of 4 tours in the Balkan War. Every year he gives a lecture to my class about the war history and politics of the region and the conflict. One year a student, big video gamer, asked him what is it like to kill a man. Complete silence, and then my husband told him, I won't tell you what it's like to shoot another man, but I will tell you this. And he explained how it was for them to carry away the dead bodies from the conflict areas, the smell, and lifting the bodies up to rebury them in the proper zones. Muslims and Christians wanted their dead to be separated after the conflict. In a few minutes, he shattered any idea that this kid had, that war and conflict is all about adventure or skill or action. At a summer camp I went to as a kid, I lived in a cabin for a few weeks with about 20 other kids and a former Marine as a counselor. One kid asked him the same thing. His reply was never, ever, ever ask a former soldier that question. Air Force active duty here. Still fairly new to the military. Only been in a few years but my unit deploys like crazy. Haven't been outside the wire as I have a technical job, but quite a few of my close and unit buddies have. Some of us have been scared shitless, to the core, from close calls. Other people crack jokes or seem unfazed when their buddies get unlucky and they have to go get their bloody gear out the room afterwards. Just depends on the personality, I guess, and the capacity to deal with stressful situations. Personally, I'm scared of my own shadow on a normal day, so I find it terribly hard to sleep on deployments knowing there are people a few hundred meters away that want to show me to the exit. Movies don't portray that constant anxiety. Movies do sometimes portray the butthole that degrades the enemy as subhumans and usually as a hardus. I've seen that firsthand. I think it's a coping mechanism to deal with the horrible stuff they have to do. See, I don't care who you are or what you do. I find it disturbing to hear anyone say they seriously want to kill another person. And some missiles rockets do make that whistling noise incoming. When I hear that whistle now, my heart drops for a few seconds and I crap myself mayo. For me, getting shot at for the first time was the craziest thing I've ever experienced. Because the rush of adrenaline and emotions in such a short time span is incredible. I distinctly remember at first being more terrified than I have ever been in my entire life. Almost a paralyzing level of fear. Immediately followed by the most intense rage I've ever experienced at the fact that some prick was legitimately trying to kill me. It is a strange sensation to go from being so scared you just want to hide in the fetal position to directing all of your energy towards killing someone. Thank God for that though, otherwise I would have probably just stood there like an idiot and gotten killed. And I completely understand now how some people can freeze in combat. I seem to get downvoted like a mother sucker every time I recommend a subreddit, but there is combat footage that might be of interest to those, including myself, who have not experienced combat and want a non-Hollywood depiction of it. I'm not about to dig through your comment history to find out, but maybe it's because you didn't link it and people are lazy. Combat footage. 9-month tour in Afghanistan with an army infantry battalion. 1. Boredom. I was working in a relatively remote and dangerous part of southern Afghanistan that had a lot of Taliban activity and 95% of my tour, you know what the prevalent emotion was? Boredom. I hit about a dozen IEDs on patrols and was in 4 or 5 direct firefights, but much of my tour was spent sitting around, bored, bullshitting with my guys or working on paperwork or some other bureaucratic BS. 2. Amount of ammunition you expend. I've never been in combat too serious or heavy duty, but in the few incidents that I was involved in, myself and people involved only fired a few rounds. You very rarely see people going full auto or firing multiple long bursts. It's a waste of ammo and can make you a target unless you know exactly what you're shooting at and the target is of a nature that requires hundreds of rounds. If this is the case, you are probably in very serious trouble. 3. Type of fighting. Where I was in Afghanistan, we encountered IEDs all of the time. Direct fire from small arms, however, was relatively rare. It was a much more frustrating, and in many ways, scarier, way to fight a war. Many Americans have heard of IEDs, but I don't think they realize just how many casualties that they account for on the modern battlefield. 4. Time. At least in my experience and in the experience of those that I know have worked with, it seems like the majority of firefights are over in seconds. 5. Ranges. It seems like everybody in the movies is always shooting it out at point blank range, 10-20 yards. A gunfight at the range is terrifying and going to kill or injure almost everybody involved. In the area I was in Afghanistan, deserts in the south, the Taliban knew not to engage us with small arms unless they were 300-400 meters or further away. I've heard it was different in many places in Iraq, Fallujah, but most of the people I worked with in Afghanistan only saw direct contact with small arms at the 400-500 meter range, if ever. See number 2. 6. Death does not come quickly. In movies, people who get shot just fall over, dead on the spot. That's not true. I saw an Afghan police officer take a 7.62 round and keep fighting for several minutes before he eventually lost consciousness and died due to blood loss. People just don't kill over the second that they are hit by a bullet. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.